are watching Simon Says on Mtgo Academy featuring Simon Götzen.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Simon Götzen here, recording Simon Says for mtgoacademy.com. And this is a flashback episode where we revisit Innistrad. And Innistrad only, that is, Dark Ascension, not part of the draft format offered on Magic Online right now. So it's going to be triple Innistrad. The main goal of people drafting this format is twofold. The first goal is to open Liliana of the Veil, or one of the few other valuable sought-after cards. And the second goal of most drafters seems to be to draft the Spider Spawning deck. If you haven't heard of that before, look up the card Spider Spawning. And the deck basically consists of a lot of self-mill effect, mulches, forbidden alchemies, and then you just win by absurd amounts of spider spawning. Now, that alone doesn't make Innistrad one of the best limited formats of all time, of course, but what you have to realize is that that is one niche strategy out of a whole bunch of build-around strategies and also very cohesive linear strategies. You have the werewolf strategy, you have the green-white travel preparation aggressive strategy, you have a strong human theme, you have decks built around invisible stalker and equipment, you have not only the spider spawning self-mill but also the Burning Vengeance flashback decks that just try to stick a Burning Vengeance or two and then somehow kill the opponent and all their creatures by flashing back spells from the graveyard. All of these kind of strategies kind of work in conjunction, and you can't really say that one of them is strictly better than the other, although the dominance of flashback-based strategies at the end of the format was a bit too much, I think. So I think that because of the strength of spider spawning, the strength of Burning Vengeance, the other strategies got a bit less attractive, and that, I mean, I think the format was fun in the beginning and in the middle of the format until everybody started to try to draft mulch and spider spawning decks, because then it was just really a question: am I playing against a regular deck or am I playing against a combo deck? And that's not necessarily what you want to have happen in a regular format. But still, Innistrad, probably one of the best sets of recent history when it comes to limited Magic, and probably Magic overall. I mean, the whole double-faced cards shenanigans turned out really nicely, and I have pretty fond memories of drafting triple Innistrad. I would also like to see Dark Ascension in the mix, but this is what we're getting, triple Innistrad. I'm going to throw this episode in here as a kind of filler between M15 and Khans of Tarkir. I'm hoping that I get to draft Khans of Tarkir as soon as possible. And yeah, I'm also not going to do a longer intro for this Innistrad draft. It's only a one of a kind occurrence. And also there are actually a lot of Innistrad videos by myself already. You just have to go into the Simon Says archives. And Simon Says, I believe 5 to 16 actually cover Innistrad Limited. Some of them with Dark Ascension, some of them without. And if I remember correctly, most of my opening discussions are actually pretty long, with going into more detail about these build-around cards, the impact of flashback, and all these kind of things. I definitely used to be better in this format than I am now, but I hope that my relative experience with the format is still better than what my opponents will have. All right, let's see what it's going to be. Green-white, blue invisible stalker, spider spawning, burning vengeance, who knows, werewolves maybe even. All right, enjoy the show. It is time to draft some Innistrad, and the rare is Geist Honored Monk in this case, which is just a really phenomenal card. It's a human, which is sometimes relevant, and oftentimes your opponents just concede once it comes down. It's a pretty good package all in itself. There's a Bonds of Faith here, there's a Rolling Templar. Some okay cards, I guess. Nothing that stands out to me as to support the self-mill archetype. You don't really want to pick up Curse of the Bloody Tomb too early. you would much rather have mulches and so on. So overall, I think Bonds of Faith, Rolling Timber, probably the second and third best card here. The air is also okay, but this is a clear and easy first pick in Geist Honored Monk. So if possible, I want to be drafting white with the Monk now, but of course I'm open to pretty much anything. Now, somebody picked the rare and is passing a Spider Spawning. Now, this is pretty much the card that people are drafting this format for, so must have been a pretty sweet rare open to my right. I'm thinking that I'm just going to take it. I don't really want to play against it, and if I have the choice, I want to be the one playing Spider Spawning myself. I'm passing up on an Abyssinian Priest, which would work a bit better with the Monk here, and otherwise the pack is not all that exciting, so we're taking Spider Spawning. Let's see what we have here. Invisible Stalker can be absolutely amazing if you get a Butcher's Cleaver. If not, it's not all that great. It also, well, it would work in a blue-white deck, and the Spider Spawning deck wants to be blue-green or blue-black-green, and pretty much doesn't worry about cards like Invisible Stalker. It wants very specific cards to work with. I kind of like Dark Thicket Wolf here. It wouldn't be good in a Spider Spawning deck, but it's a very solid creature otherwise. I see 0 white cards, so that's not really an option. It's either going to be a green card in Dark Thicket Wolf, or pretty much a card I'm not even sure I would end up playing. So I'm going to take the Wolf. It's actually almost unblockable, which makes it pretty nice. And it synergizes with Werewolves as well, because you can spend your turn pumping this guy and then your Werewolves flip. Alright, so there's a mulch. I could definitely go into Spider Spawning here. Stitch Drake is fine. Tribute to Hunger is fine. But I'm not a big fan of Edict effects. If your opponents can just like sacrifice their weakest creature, it's often not worth the mana, and it doesn't do what you want it to do at the point you need it to do something. Grizzled Outcast is a very solid 5-drop, 4/4 or 7/7. Hollowhenge Scavenger is also quite nice. I think that I like the Outcast a bit more even, but both are very fine indeed. I'm going to take them out here. There is a Stitch Drake which also works in the self-mill, but if you want to go self-mill, you have to make sure that your self-mill is actually working out, and that's why Mulch is just so much more important. Let's see. Grasp of Phantoms is a very nice card with the flashback option in particular, and Silent Departure is one of the best blue commons in the whole set, in the format. I'm not going to take Cellar Door, and yeah, the other cards are once again okay, but not exceptional. Orchard Spirit, Ranger's Guile. I think that Grasp of Phantoms is most likely a bit better than Silent Departure, but I'm honestly not sure if that's always true or not. Like, I'm most likely not going to end up in a super tempo-y deck, so I think I would much rather pay a bit more mana. Grasp of Phantoms just synergizes better with Mulch than Silent Departure, but I think that's a close pick. I'm not entirely sure what the best pick would be here. Forbidden Alchemy, pretty late 6th pick Alchemy is awesome news, because it means that the blue-green-black self-mill is most likely wide open. Alright, Ghost Squatter does not look like a card that I want. Ghoulcaller's Bell is actually something you can go for, with, yeah, well, the Bell milling both players, but that, of course, being an advantage for you. I'm not so sure if you really want to draft Ghoulcaller's Bell decks, or if you just want, for example, a Moon Heron instead, or Heron, I don't know. I'm going to take the Bird. I think ultimately it's going to be a more solid play than the Bell, and I do need some creatures in my graveyard if I want to make Spider Spawning as good as possible. Alright, one of my favorite type of cards is Frightful Delusion. Just getting so much value for such a little effect. It's probably not the right pick for this deck though. Tribute to Hunger is an option. Grave Bramble is actually an option as well, just as a defensive body and another way to power up Spider Spawning. So it's actually funny that the like spells like Spidery Grasp, Frightful Illusion, ultimately they're going to end up in the graveyard, but they aren't going to be creatures for spider spawning. So I'm going to take Grave Bramble here, even if it seems a bit weak overall. This is an easy Shimmering Grotto to flashback spider spawning and Forbidden Alchemy. At this point, it doesn't really matter all that much how expensive it's going to be. We're just trying to, to get the core cards before we decide how to build this. This is actually kind of a scary card, but I'm not going to hate draft any werewolf at this stage. Nice lifelinker or a Fortress Crab. Now, yeah, the crab just seems better. I really don't have any black cards. Traveler's Amulet is a nice way to get a swamp out of the deck. Even, I just have to be careful not to mill it with the Forbidden Alchemy. And it's also good against werewolves. You basically can delay the Traveler's Amulet until there would be a turn where you would be unable to prevent the werewolves from flipping. Alright, Geist Honored Monk is most likely not going to be in this deck. I think it was definitely correct to first pick it, but then white just didn't appear to be open. Maybe my right neighbor picked up a Geist Honored Monk himself. It's definitely possible. Moorland Haunt, sadly, not going to be the card for us. Civilized Scholar is really good. It's not always that great to transform it. You really just want the looting effect, so I'm not entirely sure if I should pick it here. There's an Armored Scab which would be good on the wheel, but clearly Forbidden Alchemy would be the better card for us here. Now, Runic Repetition is actually a card that I would love to wheel. It's kind of a key card for the Spider Spawning archetype, but only for the Spider Spawning archetype. Yeah, I'm going to take the Alchemy, hoping to wheel Runic Repetition here. And the good thing about Runic Repetition is that you can basically go infinite with Memory's Journey, Runic Repetition, Spider Spawning, and Self-Mill effects. Laboratory Maniac also being an absolutely key card for that. Here, Armored Scab is the best self-mill card. Ambush Viper is fine. Invisible Stalk I already talked about. There's also Moorland Haunt, the second one I'm passing, which could make for a very good blue-white deck. But that's none of my concern, really. Battleground Geist is only okay. Scab Goliath is too expensive. Oh wow, foil Devil's Play, it's also pretty sweet. I'm thinking of just taking Think Twice here. There's also the option to just take another 5-drop, which wouldn't be horrible. But Think Twice seems like it fits into this deck a bit better, and draws me into my combo pieces. Alright, Delver of Secret I don't think is going to make it. Unburial Rites is interesting, except for the fact that my mana is most likely not going to be able to support it. Oh, there's also a Dream Tryst for the absolute self-mill action. I don't really have enough support for the spider spawning yet, but I might just go for the Dream Tryst anyway, because the black casting cost is just a bit too restrictive. Let's take the Dream Tryst and see what happens. None of this is very interesting. There's an Ever Since Pilgrim, which taps for white, which I can't really use right now, but it's still going to be acceleration and a creature in the graveyard. And looking at the alternatives, it's really the only card I want out of this pack. So I kind of need the Runic Repetition to wheel, I think. Would be a pretty strong card in my deck. Here, Back from the Brink allows me to get copies of my creatures in my graveyard. It's definitely not bad, but I'm thinking that Selhoff Occultist might just be better. Yeah, ultimately creating copies of my mediocre creatures isn't going to win me the game. Alright. Bitterheart Witch is interesting. If you get a curse or two, it can be really, really good. But if you don't, of course, then it's just not. So it doesn't seem like the kind of card I want to pick. I also know that it used to be bugged quite a bit, so I don't know if that has been fixed or not. Hollow Edge Scavenger is fine, and Typhoid Rats is fine. I don't think that Ghoul Caller's Chant is good in this deck. Typhoid Rats also suffers from costing black, so I'm just going to take the Scavenger. Even though Morbid is not that easy to activate. You kind of want to be aggressive to do that. Alright, and there is another Dream Twist, but also a Curse of the Bloody Tomb. Now, I'm actually not a fan of cursing myself, because you kind of can't stop it. And the plan of this deck is not to mill the opponent out. So I'm taking Dream Twist here. I think that's the much better card. And there's Runic Repetition. That makes a lot of difference here. Being able to get the spider spawning eventually multiple times is absolutely huge. And now if we get a Memories Journey, then we actually have the infinite spider spawning assembled, I think. Can't quite remember what you needed to get together, but it seems like that's a good start. Alright, this Sculpt Goliath, it might just be the pick. Exiling 2 creature cards from my graveyard shouldn't be a problem, and then I get a 6/9 for 6. Once again, it's better to take a creature than to take a random non-creature. Pretty late Summerworld Spider, I'm quite surprised about that. Better in this deck than Grizzled Outcasts. And also a late Ghoul Raiser. I'm not sure if I want to play against this Graveyard Shovel. Ultimately, I should be self-milling myself quickly enough that it doesn't matter. I don't really want to play against a deck with multiple Ghoul Raisers. Yeah, Make-A-Wish is actually pretty horrible in the self-mill deck, because you get random cards, and because you mill yourself so much, the 2 cards you get are most likely pretty weak. Much weaker than if you played a regular deck that only got very powerful cards into the graveyard. So unfortunately, we passed upon the Bitterheart Witch, and now there's a Curse of Death's-Hold in this pack, which is pretty insane. I would even consider splashing it, but currently my black support is not there. The problem is I probably can't beat that card either, because I have only very little ways of getting creatures into play that have sufficient power to win the game with Curse of Death's Hold. The card I want to pick here is Gnaw to the Bone, because it's kind of another key card in the spider spawning deck, but that's a card that I'm kind of sure is going to wheel out of this pack, which is actually pretty stacked with a card like Slayer of the Wicked, Reckless Wave, and so on. Claustrophobia, of course, also a good card, but I'm taking the curse here. Had I taken the Bitterheart Witch, I might be onto something here, but I don't think that's going to happen. Ludwig's Test Subject is a card that I was really fond of during Innistrad, but ultimately you have to invest so much mana to get a 13/13 that it's actually not as good as I thought. Lumberknot can be absolutely insane. My favorite card in this pack is actually Burning Vengeance, but I don't think that splashing Burning Vengeance is a good idea. I don't have that much cheap flashback anyway. I have the 2 Dream Twists and the Think Twice, but my other cards cost 7 to flashback, or in the case of Spider Spawning, I should be winning anyway. So not really a Burning Vengeance deck, although that's just so much fun to draft. I think the pick is between another Self Occultist or the Lumberknot, just to have a creature that most decks can't deal with, and it synergizes really nicely with the rest of my weak creatures and the spider spawning strategy. Also makes it maybe a bit more likely to wheel a blue card out of this pack. There's the Butcher's Cleaver to go with the Invisible Stalker, for which I will need some kind of naturalize effect sooner or later. There's also a Gnaw to the Bone, so if I want to really make sure that I get one, I should take it here. And the Butcher's Cleaver is not actually good in my deck anyway, so the strong, what is it, 3rd pick, Gnaw to the Bone. Another Devil's Play. Oh boy. It's also the Forbidden Alchemy. I have to be kind of careful not to deck myself, but I am the spider spawning deck, so I just need to win with spider spawning before that happens. I also need some more creatures. You already see that I kind of had to take all these creatures just to make sure that spider spawning does something. I'm still going to take it here. There's no reason taking a Devil's Play or something like that. Bitterheart Witch. Yeah, I think I'm just taking that, and then I'm gonna see if I can make it work. It might just be another way to an easy victory if that works out. And for that reason, oh wow. Charmbreaker Devils, random instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. No, I'm taking another Traveler's Amulet. It's the only downside of the amulet is that it's not a creature for spider spawning, so I might be forced to cut them, despite the potential of supporting the curse. Sensory Deprivation is fine. I'm not gonna run it. Unburial Rites is better, but not good in my deck. So let's just take the Deprivation. Even Foil the Graveyard Shovel doesn't make it here. I'm taking a Mulch. It's kind of the card that I was still missing. Apart from creatures, but I don't think I can fix that right now. So the Gnaw to the Bone actually wheeled. I'm going to take it, but I'm not sure if it's making the deck. Very late Burning Vengeance as well. I would kind of like to play it, to splash it. Let's just take it and then see how my mana works out. This is a pretty weak flashback card. I don't think I want that. Just take a random creature. Ghost Quarter I don't need. Rotting Fen Snake is a creature. Sometimes it's as easy as that. And a Stormkirk Petrel, alright. Ancient Grudge. And then probably a basic land. Alright, yeah, I guess I still have some work to do here. Alright, let's see. I would say the correct way to build this deck is to maximize the creature count and then only play the spells that are absolutely necessary for the overall strategy. And that probably means some pretty severe cutting of cards, just because I can't support to play so many cards. My alternative, I think, would be to play more than 40 cards, which would allow me to play more creatures to ultimately have the spider spawning be even better than it is. And then maybe I can support more of these spells. But as you can see, I'm on 16 creatures, and some of these are pretty bad. I mean, Manor Skeleton, Rotting Fen Snake, Stormkirk Petrel. These cards are not cards I want to be playing. It's just that I might play them just to have a solid amount of creatures for the spider spawning flashback, and for the Gnaw to the Bone flashback as well, or Hardcast and flashback. So because I have 3 alchemies and 2 Gnaw to the Bones and a Runic Repetition, I pretty much know that I'm going to be casting a strong spider spawning. So, and if I draw the Runic Repetition, I even know that I can cast spider spawning 3 times, even if I mill it myself. And that makes me think that I really only need these cards, and I can do without a lot of the other non-creatures. For example, the Traveler's Amulets aren't as needed with Double Mulch, and the Dream Twists I can probably do without in the main deck. If my deck performs as expected, I should be putting a lot of my cards into the graveyard and should maybe not need both Dream Twists, maybe one of them. Burning Vengeance is out for mana considerations, and it pains me to say it, but it might be correct to not play Curse of Death's Hold in this kind of deck. But I kind of want to play the Bitterheart Witch, so it's just difficult not to play it. The problem is that you only search your library, and I'm going to have a lot of games where Curse of Death's Hold is in my graveyard, and in my graveyard it's pretty much dead. It's not going to do anything. Also, I'm not going to be playing enough swamps to cast it, so I kind of need the Bitterheart Witch to die at a point in the game where the Curse of Death's Hold is still in my library. And that together just seems a bit ambitious, I'm afraid. On the other hand, I almost need to play this anyway to have a sufficient number of creatures in my deck. I can still cut some creatures, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I think the Traveler's Amulet are the first to go. I like the Mulches, and I kind of like the Think Twice as well, although I think Think Twice is weaker than my other flashback spells. It's probably the weakest of my flashback spells, to be honest. Looking at the creatures, the black cards are going to be the most difficult to support. If I do get one of them into play, like the Manor Skeleton, it's actually kind of nice to have a Regenerator in this kind of strategy. I like the more expensive creatures better, though, just to have some high impact stuff to do. Now, if I put this Shimmering Grotto over here for a moment, looking at this creature base, I have some solid creatures. Like, they aren't amazing, but they will do their job, I guess. Now, if I play the Bitterheart Witch, I want the Curse of Death's Hold in my deck for sure, but I kind of think that it's just a mistake to run both of them because of my mana. And the high potential that the curse gets milled, and then Bitard, which is just a 1/2 death touch creature for 5. So if I was playing a different deck, it might be correct to run the curse. I think it's not correct to do so. It might actually be more correct to splash Burning Vengeance, but then I'm kind of forced to play the Tremor's Amulets, and if I do that, my whole creature count becomes an issue again, and my self-mill becomes an issue as well. If you play 2 Tremor's Amulets, a Swamp and a Mountain, you are just so much more likely to, for example, mill the Swamp and not be able to get it anymore. And that would just be a very easy way to lose a game if I don't get my Swamp at some point. For example, if I don't mulch into it. For that reason, I should probably be playing 2 Swamps at least with to support the spider spawning and the random creatures that I'm going to run. Let's see, I already talked about Dream Twist, which I could do without. I think I like the Alchemies better. I want the Gnaw to the Bones. They will make sure that I can survive long enough to actually get there. And the real question is if milling myself for 6 might actually be better than drawing 2 cards with Think Twice. Because ultimately, what counts is the spider spawning, and Dream Twist gets me closer to spider spawning than Think Twice will ever do. So maybe these are actually the spells that I want to play. And then if I still run 17 lands, I would need to cut 4 creatures out of this deck, leaving me with 11 creatures. I think that's not enough. I think I can't support this kind of strategy with 11 creatures. What I could do would be to only play 1 Gnaw to the Bone, which could be enough also to keep me alive long enough to play that spider spawning. It's also entirely possible that Gnaw to the Bone is actually better than Grasp of Phantoms, simply because the whole mill theme worked out rather nicely in this deck. So, actually a pretty difficult decision, I think. Let's take out the Patrol. The black creatures obviously being worse than the others. And Manor Skeleton might also be just not what I want. I thought the idea of having a regenerator is nice, but the fact that I'm just going to have very little black mana just makes these black creatures sufficiently worse that I don't want to have them. And that said, I'm probably just cutting the Grasp of Phantoms now, and I'm only going to bring it in if I see that I need it. That way I have the most important self-mill pieces all in the deck. I have the Runic Repetition, which is kind of a combo card, and I have 1 Gnaw to the Bone. If I need another one, I can always bring it in. But I still have 13 creatures, so that my spider spawning is not going to be too weak, ultimately. Alright, I think I like this kind of setup. Enough good cards, good stuff to do. The Rotting Fence Egg is pretty random, but it's at least something that counts as a creature. And this looks like a pretty even split on the mana. Mulch is going to find me the remaining sources. So let's see what Magic Online suggests. A single Swamp, I already said I want 2. That means I'm playing 1 Mist Forest. And I could play 7/7/2 and a Shimmering Grotto, with a slight chance that I don't have the mana for Mulch. Could also leave the Shimmering Grotto in the sideboard, but because of the self-mill, I really want to make sure that I have black available at some point in the game. So that's 16, 17, and I could go down to 6 islands and play 8 forests instead if I really want to have that Mulch on turn 2. I mean, I can keep any hand with Mulch as long as I'm likely to find a forest. So I'm actually going to put 1 more forest in here and the Shimmering Grotto. That gives me 9 green sources for Mulch, which probably means that I can keep a hand without a green, hoping to draw into Mulch just naturally. I'm not the biggest fan of Shimmering Grotto, but in this deck I think it's warranted to run it. Alright, let's see how that works out.
Do you love to play Magic Online but have a tight budget? Check out Mtgo Academy's Academy Budget Bot in the Magic Online Classifieds. All cards in stock are cheaper than 1 event ticket.
Time for round 1. I was the last to finish deck building, so let's play first. And, interesting. This might actually be a keep. So, I have the 2 Mulches and a Dream Twist. If I draw a single land, I'm going to not be missing any land drops for the rest of the game. And I curve out nicely into Occultist and some other creatures. So the only problem is, of course, that I do need to draw one of my lands until I get going. I'm still going to keep this. I have to be kind of afraid of a fast werewolf start, but Mulch is just one of the best cards in my deck. Something is wrong. Alright, Magic on. I had a little hiccup there, but it looks to be resolved. My shortcuts are working again. And yeah, no werewolf is good news. No land is bad news, but I mean, I was risking that, clearly. And it looks like my opponent is also discarding. That could have been just my opponent being confused about me F6ing. Okay, interesting. Yeah, Cassie Wolf goes to the graveyard. And I drew Absence Pilgrim, so if that lives, I'm actually golden. It just can't be Geist Flamed or anything like that. And there is Bloodcrazed Neonite. So I would actually like to block that with my Absence Pilgrim before it grows out of hand. Land? Oh, there we go. So what I could do here is to play the Cell of Occultist. I'm not missing a land drop this turn. And then the Neonate is likely running into the Occultist. I think that's what I want to be doing. I still have time to cast my Mulch later. Of course the Occultist could die here, but at least it's not dying before I get to block, which is good. And that's a Vampiric Fury, so +2/+0 and first strike, my Occultist dies, and I mill myself. Another land, so I have more than enough lands here. I can just play Fortress Crab, in fact. There's no reason to mulch if I'm just drawing my lands naturally. And this makes it even more likely that I will be killing that Neonate for value with the Fortress Crab. Okay, that is fine. That's actually the Vampire Lord that we started with. That was in our opening pack. But this Bloodcrazed Neonate is not dealing us any damage. So yeah, that's already a pretty good turn of events, I would say. I could mulch with the help of the Pilgrim. That actually seems better. I have no use for the white mana. And that gives us 3 more lands. So now I can play the forest and prepare to Dream Twist myself twice during my opponent's turn. Could also mulch, but that probably just means I have to discard cards I don't want to discard. Alright, yeah, my opponent's deck is not well suited to beat a Fortress Crab. I milled a swamp already, so now I have to be kind of careful not to mill another one. Maybe I should wait till I found the swamp then, until I mill myself any further. That seems better. I can always just hardcast the spider spawning at least, but there is really no reason to risk it here. So I think I still mulch, because I really want to find that swamp as fast as possible. Still no swamp. And I'm not really playing on curve here, as you can see. Geist Flame Evanescence Pilgrim is fine. I'm actually kind of happy that it died, to be honest. I think I do want another blocker here to be on the safe side. That this air I don't want to face if it should grow. 14 cards left in my library, so I think if the alchemy finds me the swamp or one of my black sources, I'm fine. Lumberknot is also a nice card. Still Still no black source. Gnaw to the Bone is going to be sufficiently good out of the graveyard. Moon Heron might be the card that I want. I mean, I'm still fine just playing creatures, naturally, of course. I also like the Number Knot. Might be better to play the Lumber Knot first, because the Moon Heron might die to a burn spell, and then the earlier I play the Lumber Knot, the better, basically. I'm not going to attack, though. That just gives my opponent too many options, I feel like. Looks like I'm actually facing a mono red deck. It's kind of interesting. This guy turns into a 5/5 that attacks each turn if able. Fortress Grab is a pretty good answer to that already. Runic Repetition is also awesome, although currently I have nothing exiled and I'm still waiting for my black source for all these Forbidden Alchemies in my graveyard. Don't think that it's going to come to that. So this puts me on 8 mana. Oh, yeah, I don't know what I did there. I just thought I should attack because creatures might be dying, but clearly that was not to be. If my opponent passes the turn with the Watch Keep, I might want to cast 2 spells, or cast an End of Turn Dream Twist targeting my opponent. At this stage, I'm not keen on milling myself any further. And that would prevent the Watch Keep from flipping. Although, to be honest, I can probably just let it flip. And not worry about it any further. Geist Flame from the hand, so the Moon Heron is being dealt with. Geist Flame a pretty potent card, and I guess it was worth it to get the Lumber Knot going. Grave Bramble. So it's actually kind of difficult to see how many creatures I have in my graveyard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. So 8 guys in my graveyard. I could just spider spawning for 8. I know that if I find my swamp, I get to flashback it, and I have the Runic Repetition, which is pretty much incredible. I currently have no way to get through this werewolf, and I don't want to trade the Geist Flame for my Fortress Crab if I can help it. So the real problem is that I don't really get through here. I guess I'm just playing the spider spawning. All the creatures that are going to die are also going to be pretty good in conjunction with my Lumber Knot. So yeah, just running it all out here. And this turn I'm not attacking. I don't want to expose my Lumber Knot unnecessarily. A card that could get me is Rolling Tumbler, which I actually passed. But these Blood Crazed Neonates don't look like that's going to happen. Interesting. Another Dream Twist. Yeah, I'm not casting that on myself. I have 6 cards in my library left. I am, however, going to cast the Somberwald Spider, I think. The real question is, if my spiders are attacking this turn, I guess I can attack with all spiders and the Hollowhenge Scavenger. There's very little risk because I'm also playing the Somberwald Spider, and if my opponent doesn't block, I'm dealing a lot of damage, so looks like a solid attack. The Grave Brambles are actually also really good against the Blood Crazed Neonates. This is the main reason to do this, is to get a huge Lumber Knot. So now I'm pretty much safe from the Rolling Tumbler if my opponent had it. Okay, just a concession. My black source would have been there at some point, and then the madness would have really started. Not that it was necessary, but still nice. Sensory deprivation is not bad against decks that are that aggressive. I kind of like the idea of Manor Skeleton as well, but to be honest, my overall setup is already pretty good against this kind of vampire deck. I just want a few more ways to block these creatures early on. Sensory deprivation sounds pretty awesome as a way to just stop any kind of vampire before it gets out of hand. What would also be good is, of course, Curse of Death's Hold, but as we've seen, the black mana can be an issue. So I might just want the Manor Skeleton rather than some expensive guy like the Somberwald Spider or even the Scap Goliath. That just doesn't seem necessary in this kind of matchup. So Manor Skeleton is in. Second Gnaw to the Bone I don't think is that great. If I'm losing because my opponent gets these kind of vampires active too quickly, I don't think that life gain alone is going to sufficiently help me. So what I could take out is like one Forbidden Alchemy, because if anything I won't have the time to really use it. Yeah, I guess Forbidden Alchemy is still better than Dream Twist. Dream Twist probably the weakest card here, at least the second one. I like to have one to kickstart the spider spawning a bit. To be honest, I'm probably favored this game, even if I don't go into full combo mode. Alright, this hand really wants a mulch. And it has 0 early protection. I think I have to mulligan. I'm just dead to these crazy vampires. And I would just be doing nothing the whole time. This looks better. I have the early protection. At least a Cell of Occultist, which could be good. Dark Thicket Wolf also great if I ever draw the green mana. So there's the Neonate, and I'm just going to deprive it immediately. Just a Watch Keep again, so no damage for me. And a mulch, so that green source would be good. Drawing 5 islands is kind of unfortunate. At least a swamp would have been nice. I think I'm just blocking the Neonate if I have the choice, if I have the chance. Yeah, I guess killing a creature here is good. It's kind of well, I have the Lumber Knot in my deck. Not exactly sure. I'm just gonna mill myself. Oh, awesome. Milled the swamp there. But at least I found the forest, so that's good. Now, there's something I can do here, and that is to delay the mulch by a turn in order to play mulch plus Dark Thicket Wolf next turn, so that I can guarantee to flip the Bane back. I think that's what I'm going to do, because I'm not guaranteed to find spells otherwise. So the way these werewolves work is that if one player has cast two spells, then the werewolf flips back. Don't really care for Cobbled Wings, and now my opponent can't cast another spell, otherwise the werewolf transforms again. Alright, Moon Heron is a potential blocker, but I need to mulch into a forest. And that didn't work. Well, all my plans, and they just didn't work. I found another island, which is kind of the worst case again. I needed to find a swamp and or forests, and I got the last island. That means taking another 5. Not great, but not much I can do about it. So this turn I get to play 2 spells, which is good. And I almost want to play the Alchemy. No, not play the Alchemy, because if my opponent passes the turn with a with the werewolf again, then I get to alchemy to punish him. On the other hand, the alchemy might just find me the swamp that I need. But then I have to alchemy now. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have even played the island before thinking about this. I could also just play Dark Thicket Wolf and Moon Heron, then my opponent might kill something with the Geist Flame, and then I'm expecting my opponent to just pass the turn again to have the Bane, and then I'm casting Forbidden Alchemy into whatever I can find. I think that's fine. Getting those creatures onto the battlefield is quite solid, and I'm not in any way dead here. I'm on 10. Even if my opponent is the one with the Devil's Plays. I can take another 5, then I lose to Devil's Play, of course. But it's not clear if I'm actually taking another 5. Milled a forest, that's not a problem. I need to find the swamp now. So it would be good to draw a spell or to be able to alchemy into a mulch, just so that the Watchkeep flips again. Lumberknot, that's not good. So another alchemy, that might be the way to go. I can also get a forest and cast the Lumberknot, but that doesn't get me closer to where I need to be. I need to find the swamp, and the alchemy does that, the other cards don't. So there's the swamp. What else is there? Grave Bramble, Runic Repetition, Summerwald Spider. Yeah, the Runic Repetition would be great, but I need the swamp. Otherwise, I'm just not ever winning. On the other hand, with the swamp, I'm very likely to win, so even if I only get a single spider spawning. That is fine. I'm going to mill myself. Milled a forest. My opponent flips the Watchkeep again. And I draw another double green card. Alright, so now it's interesting. The amount of creatures in my graveyard is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I get 8 spiders. And then I'm just trying to kill the Bane. And I'm trying to draw into a forest. Or I'm just flashbacking for Forbidden Alchemy. That's better than not doing anything and taking 5 damage here. I can't afford that. So what I could actually do would be to attack with the Occultist. Don't know if that's worth it. Like, I mill myself again. It might actually be better to mill my opponent out with the Occultist somehow. That doesn't seem too realistic, but throwing away a perfectly fine creature is also not the way to go. And with the two green creatures in my hand and a bunch of forests left in my deck, I'm not feeling too bad about this. It's kind of unfortunate that I had to put the Runic Repetition into my graveyard. That would have been a phenomenal card. I thought I could block with all of these somehow. Oh, I think I can. No? Interesting. I really thought that was possible somehow. Similarly to the attack with all command. Alright, let's see what happens here. I'm just going to mill my opponent now. I see no reason to mill myself any further. I've already cast the spider spawning, and I will find a Gnaw to the Bone at some point. It's really unfortunate that you can't pop out your graveyard, because the graveyard is so important here. This gets first strike and is flying, but flying doesn't really matter because my spiders have reach. Another alchemy, so now I kind of need to look for the forest. Yeah. Still no forest, alright. I don't want to mill myself any further, I think. This already puts me down to 6 cards. And if I mulch, for example, that just seems pretty bad. I'm going to take the Dream Twist, because that allows me to Dream Twist my opponent for 6. And I can't cast either of my spells, which is kind of bad. I think my best bet here is to pass the turn again. And then block the Kessig Wolf with all spiders again. Okay, no attacks. Clearly, well, the Kessig Wolf is not forced to attack, of course. There's the forest, that's good. So now I play the Lumberknot. I'm wondering if I now have to play around. If I now have to play around Rolling Templar as well. But Lumberknot is always going to be weak against that. So now if creatures die, it's kind of good for me. But the wolf will only eat 1 creature, so the Lumberknot is not even out of range. I would have to attack with quite a lot of creatures here. Maybe even all of them, but I don't want to expose the occultist to just dying here. I could attack with all spiders except for 1, and then I still have a blocker. But I have only a blocker that gives my opponent quite a lot of value. I think I have to hold back 2, so I'm still threatening the double block on the wolf. I like that best. It's possible that Lumberknot was not the right creature to play here, and that instead the Hollow Range Scavenger would have been better post-combat. Also, I do have to be aware that I might be enabling Devil's Play by milling here. Okay. Doesn't look too threatening. Alright, there's the Gnaw to the Bone. So now I'm not losing to Devil's Play anymore. That much is for certain. I'm just going to make sure that my Lumberknot gets 3 power here. And then I think I'm not even forced to win via damage anymore. But I'm still going to threaten to do so with the help of the Lumberknot. Bloodcraze Neonate, okay. Oops. And again another 5. Now if my opponent wants to, he can attack me, for example, with the air and start to grow it while still having Kessig Wolf on defense, but then I'm just threatening to attack with everything. And now my Lumberknot is actually large enough that my opponent doesn't have a good block anymore. What my opponent doesn't know is that I'm also going to Gnaw to the Bone. And that just means that I'm completely out of reach here. I don't think that I want to expose the Lumberknot to a double block, but well, to be honest, if my opponent double blocks here, I'm just winning anyway. So I think I'm just attacking with everything. No matter what happens, I either get to mill or I get to grow this insanely large, and I'm not dying because I have the Gnaw to the Bone. So the only thing I have to worry about is that I have 3 cards in my library. And this attack should give my opponent the least options on survival. Yeah, it is kind of unfortunate to lose the occultist, but I also don't think it's a huge deal. Oh, the vampires get first strike. Alright, I didn't think about that. That's actually pretty good. I thought that if the occultist dies from first strike, it's always going to be good for me, but that's not the case now. I still think that I'm in very fine shape. It's just that I thought that my Lamron wouldn't be dying. And I didn't think about the potential of first strike there. So where's... Oh, I think I bought it out the second Dream Twist, so I don't have that. Alright. Reckless Wave, alright. Another forest. It's possible that I'll have only forests left, I'm not sure. The scavenger is going to be my key to victory here. Like, I need to somehow force my opponent to chump block it. That's what I expect to happen. Like, kill 2 spiders here and chump block the Hollow Hinge Scavenger. It's possible that I should have just only attacked with a Scavenger as well. Oh, interesting. It's an interesting chump block. I wasn't expecting that. Alright. Maybe a Geist Flame from the graveyard? I thought those were gone, so... Interesting. Oh, another Vampiric Fury. Alright. Opponent got me there a little bit. So now it's not clear if I can actually deal the last points of damage. I only have 2 draw steps left, so... Nope, doesn't look like that's happening. I mean, I have the Forbidden Alchemy, but that just kills me if I play it, so... Weird game. That's for sure. That's why I would need another Dream Twist to actually still win the game. Yep, that's not going to do it. Well played by my opponent. Too many Vampiric Furies to somehow survive the onslaught. So on the play, I can probably bring in the Scarp Goliath again. Another way to close out the game. I do like the Burning Vengeance, but I'm not going to go for any kind of mana shenanigans. The fact that my opponent has at least 2 Geist Flames does make Avacyn's Pilgrim a lot worse. But it is a creature, and if it comes down early, my opponent doesn't have the Geist Flame, it's actually really, really good. It's also a blocker for all these first strikers. So, yeah, the only question is what to take out. Maybe the Rotting Fence Snake against the deck with 2 Geist Flame. Overall, I think I should still be favored here. I'm not sure if Avacyn's Pilgrim is a card that you should board out, but I really want to make sure that I have this option. Maybe the Dream Twist is a card I don't need necessarily, but Not to the Bone, as we've seen, might just not be enough to get me there. Bitterheart Witch, I'm not playing if I'm not playing Curse of Death's Hold. Stormcroak Patrol maybe as another way to win the game. Yeah, maybe just another creature. That's just a bad creature overall. I don't know. I just have to play better with the spider spawning. I think that should be the key to victory. And this hand is great, so I'm keeping. I only have 6 minutes left. I'm not as used to the spider spawning days as I used to be. And I can just play this. It's a pretty good mulch here. Even finding the swamp. Discarding forest, that's easy. Okay, that was it. I was afraid I had to discard more cards. Neonate, I'm not going to be able to block, so I guess I should try to find something relevant with the Forbidden Alchemy. Maybe a Grave Bramble. That would already be very good. Another Neonate, so now any kind of blocker would be good for this turn. Manor Skeleton is definitely weaker than the Cell of Occultist. The Occultist at least has the potential to trade nicely here. The Manor Skeleton doesn't, so I'm taking the Occultist. Dark Thicket Wolf is also nice, but it's not better than the Occultist this turn. I'm probably losing the Occultist to a Vampiric Fury. And then my plan is going to be to play some Walled Spider or maybe even the Dark Thicket Wolf. The Dark Thicket Wolf is kind of funny. It might be the turn where I have the mana to pump it without getting punished by my opponent. And then... oh, there's the Devil's Play. Alright. So my opponent does have a Devil's Play, in fact. Milled Runic Repetition, which is very unfortunate. I'm also taking a bunch of damage, which is bad. So this is the interesting turn where I can Dark Thicket Wolf and try to kill this. But yeah, it's better to summon Walled Spider. The Spider, if my opponent doesn't have Vampiric Fury, blocks the Bloodcrazed Neonate, at least one of them. And then Dark Thicket Wolf is still a blocker for Bloodcrazed Neonate. I'm afraid that I'm getting Vampiric Fury here, but there's not much I can do about it. Yeah, my opponent has a few too many of these. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 creatures in the graveyard. That's not enough. I can play the wolf and try to block with it. And that's kind of what I have to do. And then I can play Mulch and Spider Spawning next turn. It seems better to wait one more turn here. My opponent can't Devil's Play the wolf, and my opponent can't Geist Frame the wolf before I've blocked. I'm also not dead. Well, I'm kind of in a bad spot. If my opponent can burn me out, so... yeah, that might actually do me in. That doesn't matter. Interesting line of play here. A really interesting line. I think I might have a shot, but I'm not sure. So if I block here, I go down to 2, and then I can flashback the Gnaw to the Bone after this has died, and play the Spider Spawning in my turn. That way I'm not dying to Devil's Play. I have to cast the Gnaw to the Bone. I could also let the Wolf survive and play, for example, End of Turn Alchemy, but then I'm forced to cast the Gnaw to the Bone. So it's actually better to let the damage resolve here. This grows, which is fine. I flashback Gnaw to the Bone. Go up to 12. Play a Mulch. Getting all these kind of lands. Then I can play land and the Spider Spawning. F6, of course. And now it's these spiders against my opponent's Bloodcrazed Neonate, which is going to be forced to attack. So I block with everything. And then my plan is to win with a flashback Spider Spawning pretty soon. Maybe after casting some Forbidden Alchemies. Could even cast both of them. Yeah, that seems like the plan. Alright, I might be doing it here with 3.5 minutes. Once again, the Runic Repetition is in the graveyard, but that's not the worst thing in the world. I also probably need to make some more spiders than 6, which shouldn't be a problem after the 2 alchemies. Opponent thought quite long about this. I'm not sure what this means. Could be another Vampiric Fury. Spider Dance. Probably no place and this. Okay, yeah, I was kind of expecting that. And I like the Hollow Edge Scavenger. If my opponent blocks a spider here, I'm gaining 5 life off the Scavenger, which I think is definitely worth it. Alright, my opponent is not playing as quickly as previously, but I'm afraid to pause the recording because I'm just really low on time. My plan is going to be to play the Scavenger, even if it doesn't gain me life. It's not really the point of the exercise. Now this is going to flip. My opponent needs to pass the turn again if he doesn't want it to flip, if he wants it to flip back. And that should give me the time that I need to pull out this game. In particular because I'm going to flip the werewolf back in my turn, during my turn. After the spiting I had 6 creatures and now I have 2 more. So I could already spider spawning for 8. Dream Twist. Now I don't want to Dream Twist myself, I think. I also kind of want the Pilgrim in the graveyard, but I need to cast a spell, so yeah, let's just take that. Alright, now I have 4 cards left in my library. This flips back again. I think overall I should be in a good spot. I just need to make sure that I win in time, and I'm on 12 lives, so well, this guy's time is actually nice because now the spider spawning is even better. If my opponent passes the turn here, I can Dream Twist my opponent just to make sure that nothing happens. Okay, Grave Bramble, I don't really care about. I mean, drawing a defender here is pretty much worthless, so. I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to cast the spider spawning. And if that doesn't get me to victory, then I wouldn't have won any other way. Like, if my opponent's deck has a Rolling Temblor, I'm losing, but with so many Blood Craze and Neonates and whatnot, it doesn't really seem like a strategy that my opponent should be employing. Alright, this also doesn't matter at all. I have 2 minutes left, so I think I should be fine. Go. Now I even have my 6/9 trample. And a bunch of lethal creatures. Alright, we got there. Yeah, I didn't play tight enough game 2. And was kind of surprised that my opponent had all these Vampiric Furies on defense. And then I had to play really quickly this game, but my deck really performed as expected. I don't even need all these flashbacks. I can pretty much deplete my deck after a couple of turns and then just cast a spider spawning to win. Alright, see you next round.
Curious about the price of a Magic Online card? Try our searchable price guide on the right sidebar of any mtgoacademy.com page.
Time for round 2 on the draw against Baibu. I have an Evanston's program and a forest, so if I draw any forest, I get the Grave Bramble. If I draw an island, I get Scarp and Alchemy. If I draw mulch, I can mulch. This doesn't look horrible, but also it might just not do anything. I'm going to go to 6. It's so much nicer to have a hand with a mulch that it's just worth it not to risk anything. I did keep a risky hand in round 1, but that was because it had mulch, and mulch is one of the best cards in my deck. It also means that I'm not super unhappy to have to mulligan. Interesting. A forest could mean green-white aggro, but it could of course also mean another self-mill spider spawning deck. Alright, Mayor of Averbrook is pretty insane. You might know this from Constructed. Your opponent just passes the turn and then gets a 3/3. That makes more wolves that are also actually 3/3s, and yeah, it's just a pretty good card. So I have the Fortress Crab available. I don't have the Grave Bramble mana. I can just mulch and see what happens here. I want to play a spell anyway and have the blocker for the Mayor. What I won't be able to do is to flip this back very easily. So I kind of have to see what happens here. There's always the chance that my opponent doesn't pass the turn without playing anything. Although it's most often right if you have a Mayor of Averbrook. Yeah, my opponent does think the same thing. So here, if I alchemy this turn, I don't think it's very likely that I find something to cast. It's much more likely that I can find a 2-mana spell with the alchemy. And that means it's best to play a Fortress Crab this turn, and then hopefully draw into like the potential to double spell with the alchemy. Or if I even draw a 2-drop, then I can also play Grave Bramble, but only if, well, that doesn't work if it's a green 2-drop, I guess. My opponent is also now restricted to 1 spell a turn. That actually not something that he's going to worry about too much. So 5-drop, not really what I wanted to see. I can just drop this. I mean, it's not going to be bad, and then I have the guaranteed double spell next turn. That might actually be better. Just allow my opponent 1 more wolf, because if I play the alchemy, I might not find something, and then I'm actually taking quite a bit of damage. So let's just play this. Of course, without Morbid, there's pretty much no way for me to generate Morbid here. Oh, interesting attack here. Hullpack Alpha is attacking into Halloween Scavenger, so that might be a +2/+4 trick or something of that sort. I'm just going to block and see what happens while also not taking any damage. Okay, Moment of Heroism is pretty much the same thing. +2/+2 and lifelink. There's a Gnaw to the Bone, that's not bad. So I want to cast Alchemy and Grave Bramble this turn. I can just make sure that this works out. Summerwald Spider is better than lands. Pretty easy choice. And that gives me more nice blockers, and especially the Hullpack Alpha, which flips back. If my opponent passes the turn here, I think I'm in a pretty good spot. Alright. Let's see. Scarp Goliath. So, actually no way for me to cast 2 spells this turn. I have 7 mana, so I have enough mana to flashback the alchemy. That might just be the best way to go about things. I don't think that getting this Scarp Goliath onto the battlefield is my most important priority. On the other hand, it might just be a way to win the game very easily. It just doesn't feel right to deplete my graveyard before I've played my good graveyard spells. Also, there's Smite the Monsters in this format. Yeah, at some point I will need some kind of blocker. Spider spawning and runic repetition. So if I take the spider spawning, I get 2 spider spawnings. If I take the runic repetition, I get a total of 3 spider spawning. So it's actually better to take the runic repetition here. Put the rest into the graveyard. With the problem being that I haven't found the number of creatures that I would have liked in my yard yet. Armored Scarp could be a tremendous draw here. I'm just going to play that instead of Somberwald Spider. So there's a Dream Twist, also the Rotting Fen Snake. So only one more creature joined the yard here. I can Dream Twist myself, and that flips back the alpha. That seems good. I don't have the mana for the Pilgrim, but that's not a big issue. Oh, there we go. So 3 more creatures now in my graveyard. At some point I have to make sure that the Mayor tokens don't just kill me. Tree of Redemption, wow. So I guess that's just... Yeah, I don't know. That's just going to be weird, but hopefully not too scary. My opponent opted not to flip the Mayor. And now this is the time where I don't have the Occultist, so I need to win over damage with the help of only spider spawning. And it's going to be a bit difficult to get more creatures into the graveyard. So overall, I'm not going to have too many creatures to work with. Also, well, I have the Gnaw to the Bone, but only 7 mana. So if I play the Somberwald Spider here, then the Mayor could potentially flip again. I suppose that the Mayor flipping is really my least of my concerns. I don't think that I can afford to play another Alchemy. That just seems a bit too ambitious. I guess that I start spider spawning so that I can runic repetition it back next turn. But I'm not super amazed by only getting 6 creatures here. I just think it's what I need to do. Thrum Sentry, alright. It looks like my opponent is fine to try to deck me, knowing that I have very little, that I can do very little against what my opponent currently has. And I kind of need to play accordingly and try to find like a 2-turn window of me attacking and somehow winning the game. Not sure if that's going to work out though. Not sure if I can lose a creature on purpose here, like a real creature that would allow my Somberwald Spider to grow, but I'm not even sure if that's actually relevant or not. My opponent has too many blocks that just don't do anything. So what I could do would be to get up to 18 spiders. Then my opponent has like 8 blockers. I attack with everything plus the Scab Goliath and hope to get there basically. I don't want to Scab Goliath before making all these kind of tokens, so let's just get back spider spawning for now. And I'm just passing the turn. I don't think that there's anything scary happening on my opponent's side. Looks like Abby Griffin is attacking. do have some blocks. I don't really care for the sentry or anything, really. Oh, that's good. Well played by my opponent, who gets free creature back, basically. So I still have this spider, and I somehow don't think that it's going to be turning morbid anytime soon. Down to 5 cards. The problem is that I milled both the Occultist and the Lumberknot, both of which are kind of insane in a setup like this, where you just have to have something to punch through. So the question is if I guess it doesn't really matter if I get morbid on this Summerworld Spider or not. It's just going to be another creature, pretty much, no matter what I do. Let's wait another turn until the spider spawning starts. Opponent is playing pretty well here, not allowing me any other creatures in my graveyard. But I also don't have any good attacks, so I think that's just what I have to work with. Gallows Warden, other spirit creatures, alright. Dark Thicket Wolf, alright, get in there. I don't even know what's happening anymore. This is just madness. Yeah, I'm afraid that my opponent just has too much stuff. I somehow doubt that I'm going to be able to punch through here. I'm going to pause this until my opponent is done. Looks like my opponent found a block that he was happy with, and as we can see, I'm not dealing all that much damage here. Yeah, I'm going to concede now. I have no way of punching through here. Kind of unfortunate, but I guess that happens. The problem was really the mayor giving my opponent too much stuff in the early game. I'm kind of thinking that Curse of Deathhold would be a good sideboard option here. Burning Vengeance also strong, but probably the curse on its own a bit stronger ultimately. I could go super crazy and also try to include the Burning Vengeance, but I'm super scared that I would just not have the mana to cast it. So I would like to mill my opponent out with the help of the Dream Twists. That might actually be something I can do. The Dream Twist is also kind of nice if my opponent is relying on the werewolves a bit too much. So otherwise, I sadly don't really have a way to close out the game. I mean, the Lumberknot is another nice option, But if my opponent has too many creatures, I'm just a bit in trouble. I'm just not sure if Burning Vengeance is an answer at all, or if it just would be enough. Wouldn't do much. I'm not sure about that. It's not like I'm flashbacking that many spells anyway. So let's focus on the curse here. And maybe I can take out an island again for another swamp. Maybe the Shimmering Grotto for a swamp. That seems kind of awesome. Just to have a little bit more reliability when it comes to the curse. And I'll have to be really careful with milling myself. So I will probably not do that at all if I don't have to. The one Gnaw to the Bone was not amazing. If my opponent beats me, then probably in a similar style to the game we just saw. So I can live without the Gnaw to the Bone, I think. Also, if my opponent knows that I have Gnaw to the Bone, he's more likely to play for me to mill myself again, which worked one time and might work another time. Alright, I kind of like this. I think the alchemies are just too important not to play them, and I could take out one more 5-drop now that I have so many of them, but I don't want to lose a creature. So ultimately it's probably just a Forbidden Alchemy that has to go. Alright, let's try this. And I would like to play first. Whoa, what a hand. This looks horrible. And this looks amazing, so an easy keep. So the game plan here is pretty straightforward, of course. Only a single forest, and there goes the curse. So much for that. Also milled a mulch, so my mana development is actually going to be a bit tough. I can just Armored Scarp here, which seems better than casting Forbidden Alchemy. Rotting Fence Snake into the graveyard. Unruly Mob. Opponent with a pretty good human draw here. It's good that I have the Hollow Range Scavenger to block with. I could Alchemy now. Yeah, I think there is no reason not to. Or no big reason. There's a bit of Hard Witch, but I need the Swamp. I know that I need the Swamp, ultimately. Anyway. And it's not like an uncastable bit of Hard Witch is going to get me very far. Thraben Sentry. Alright, that only triggers if a creature dies, so I'm actually not in any danger here. Oh well, it does trigger with the Selfless Cathar, so that's actually a pretty good combo. And the Unruly Mob also pretty nice with in conjunction with Selfless Cathar. Let's see if everything attacks here. No, only the Sentry, it looks like. So if I block the Sentry with Armored Scarab, my opponent just sacrifices Selfless Cathar. If I block with Hollow Range Scavenger, it's even worse because then my opponent just has a huge creature. If I don't block, my opponent might sacrifice the Selfless Cathar, but might also not sacrifice it. I think it's better not to block. This is a spot where it would be kind of nice to have the Gnaw to the Bone in the deck, to be honest. Summerwald Spider. Alright. It's not a bad draw. Yeah, my opponent's deck looks really nice. Now the Militia is a 6/5. So I need to make a block like this. And this. And then the Unruly Mob also grows pretty large. And that already means that this block has to work out without a Smite the Monsters or something of that sort. Alright, if damage is resolving here, it could be quite okay for me. Mountain. Rolling Templar. What? Sideboard attack against the spider spawning. Well played, my opponent. Well played. So I have 6 mana. I can play a land and Forbidden Alchemy. I can also Dream Twist myself to find the spider spawning. But I'm kind of tight on mana for that. So one option would be to only Alchemy, Flashback Alchemy, try to find the spider spawning, and then see what happens. Yeah, that seems alright. I'm also just, of course, blocking the Unruly Mob here, if I'm allowed to. If not, I'm pretty much dead. Alright, at least it's not a lethal creature. That's something. And that's no spider spawning anywhere to be seen. If I just get a creature here, I'm not winning. I need to find the spider spawning. That's pretty obvious. I mean, Dream Twist is not going to get me there. But having an Eversense Pilgrim as a chump blocker at least gives me a turn. And the Eversense Pilgrim is the most mana efficient way of doing that. Dark Thicket Wolf, on the other hand, trades for Unruly Mob, and that might be more important. Yeah, I'm taking the Wolf here. I can still Dream Twist myself to find the spider spawning. But I want to wait as long as possible, clearly. Lumberknot. Interesting. The Lumberknot has Hexproof, and I still have these 7 mana, but I would need 9 for Lumberknot and Dark Thicket Wolf. If I just play the Wolf, I am in a bit of a danger. That's clear. I think it's still my best line. And then I just try to find the spider spawning next turn. Yeah, by Dream Twisting myself. I think that's going to be the line to play here. Let's do it like this. It's still interesting if the mob attacks or not. I think it shouldn't, but it's also nice if it does, so... This is not end players, right? That would be awkward. Alright, 1 life. Tree of Redemption. I'm not scared of Tree of Redemption. So now I have 7 mana and the Runic Repetition. I really just want to find the spider spawning. And for that, I'm going to Dream Twist myself, flashback from the graveyard. And I didn't find it. So now, if I draw a land, I can Dream Twist again. And then cast Spider Spawning. If I don't draw a land, it might be something to keep me alive. It might also not be, so... Island. So I Dream Twist myself. And I didn't find anything. So now I will not have the mana to cast the spider spawning, which is really unfortunate. I have 4 cards left in my deck, but spider spawning is still in there. I can just Dream Twist again, and then I'm down to 1 card in my library. I'm just dying to this Warden. Really unfortunate. Like if this is if I find the spider spawning here, I get to cast 3 spider spawnings in a row. And I think I'm beating the tree. I didn't really think that through. But now, If I cast Forbidden Alchemy, I'm dead. And if I Dream Twist myself, well, I'm clearly not winning either. It might have been a mistake to side out the Gnaw to the Bone. Like, having one Gnaw to the Bone is probably always worth it, because now I would just gain a bunch of life, draw into the spider spawning next turn, and then be fine. But now, yeah, Occultist, spider spawning, island still in the graveyard, still in the graveyard, and now 7 mana I don't have. Yeah, well played by my opponent. Pretty sweet sideboard, Rolling Tumbler, of course, primarily against the spiders. That might have still beaten me, but yeah, ultimately the spider spawn just too low in the deck. Not quite early enough for me to take over. Also, like, game 1 felt really weird with just too many creatures on the opposing side and me milling the few cards I had to circumvent that. Alright, I was a bit rusty in Innistrad, limited anyway. Losing in the semifinals here, but I think it was a nice flashback from the past, if you get what I'm doing here. So I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll be back with Cons of Tarkir. As always, I'm Zima Godson recording Simon Says for mtgoacademy.com. See you next time. I hope you got something out of this. Bye bye.